Here we go. I guess in 5, 4, 3, 2-ish, 1-ish, and we're live.
Hey, we're
Ladies and
live. Welcome back. We made it.
that
Buddy,
was
what
quick.
happened?
It was I kept hearing a sound that sounded like my chirp and tweet my mantid friends, and it was a very prolific sound that was so funny. And I was so sad I didn't have the ability to record it. I don't know if it was you with two mics playing or something, but I went through three computers, as I showed you, three computers and an iPad, and ultimately now on the phone. And we fixed it. But wow, I needed a great laugh, and that was wonderful. Thank you, Doc.
Me
Thank
too.
you so
I think it was my side. I restarted my computer and it went away. It was two mics listening. It was some sort of feedback.
Oh,
And
it was divine. Thank you so much. Oh, you know what we should do right about now? Hey, gang, welcome to Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. We are delighted to have you guys back here. We've got some amazing and kind of edgy, real conversations to have today. Doc is about to be surprised with a little notion I have. It's not, groundbreaking or anything, but it's a serious, practical, very logical notion to explore with all of us together and see what you guys think, and then we'll let the conversation kind of go where it wants. And I think Doc might have had some points he wanted to share as well too, and directions to explore. So, how you doing,
yeah,
Doc?
well, we got our technical difficulties worked out. That was a very interesting visit from our Mantid friends.
Yes, we
They
know.
were just saying hi,
Yes,
and
the most powerful psychics of the psychics, extraterrestrials, and they oftentimes teach, and they're oftentimes presumed to be an actual primary civilization as opposed
yeah,
to a secondary creature created by some mysterious other primary civilization. Like, oh, the Greys, most people consider them manufactured, right? By who?
yeah. I guess the Mantids run the show. They're the
Well,
boss.
as far as in my lexicon, I think there is a council, and it is amongst some biologicals. I think their Fermi paradox solution is kind of simple if you think about it out numerically. I guess we can dive into this and then this little theory I had. I was thinking about this the other day about the Fermi paradox and how preposterous it kind of is to think that there's only a very brief window where you accidentally are sending out a lot of electromagnetic waves or something that's able to be detected over great, great distances. And most people don't realize, too, that a lot of these waves break down over distances. So it's not like, the Nazi Olympics is going to be making it to other galaxies. So I think the Fermi paradox solution to me is very simple. Once a society gets to a technological understanding, they realize there's always going to be another society 1,000 years more advanced, and it's just more advantageous to be quiet. Plus, um, efficiency dictates not wasting a lot of extra noise. If sound is a reflection of wasted energy. So you
Mm.
wouldn't have a lot of wasted energy just spilling all over the place. If you're an advanced civilization, you're going to do very targeted communications, very logical systems. And I also think the type 1, type 2 civilizations, type 3, and the Dyson spheres are preposterous. And I think it's kind of silly that even really big scientists believe those things, because think about it, Doc. Is it more logical to do this incredibly cumbersome thing of wrapping a star with such a tremendous amount of material, or even a Dyson swarm, which isn't as difficult as a Dyson sphere? A Dyson swarm is a bunch of individuals that aren't attached. So you don't have the problem of the structural material being strong enough. But is it logical to do that Herculean effort, or to pull energy out of micro black holes, which we know work now? We just don't know how to sustain them. There's all sorts of other more efficient means, I think, that these advanced, I don't think we're even thinking that we can understand them right. You and I know that we have been in the process of unlearning on this show. So I know whenever I hear any of these things, I instantly question them. And I don't think my perspective is right, but I think at least we are limited by the confines of our intellect.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're definitely, that is the big challenge to SETI, isn't it? I mean, they assume that, they're assuming that these civilizations are using the same technology that we were using in the 1950s. We don't even use our technology we're using in the 1950s. I mean, look how far it's progressed. Despite that little snafu we had a few moments ago, as you
Yeah.
were pointing out to me, buddy, this is awfully, think how far we've come since you and I were kids, that we can just press a couple buttons and we can be in this instantaneous video chat. Remember
It wouldn't have
the
been
old days, the video chat was considered the holy grail of technological achievement?
remember just we only had payphones, and when beepers came out, whoever had a beeper was the pimp. I mean, and
Man, they were
they've
they
got
were
to be
the
selling
Jews,
drugs.
the beeper guys and
Yeah.
women.
And then the very first phones were huge. These giant, like looked like CPR machines or something.
Yeah, the bag phones. You remember people had pagers?
Oh yeah. And now our phones are more powerful than Captain Kirk's communicator. His was just and you could talk. Man, I blow your Captain Kirk's communicator away with my iPhone. Um, we're very unappreciative. But
It's evolved so quickly, and yet we assume that we're still listening for these radio. There was a very interesting article in New Scientist last week about how SETI, these people were saying that SETI should change the way they're searching for signals, and it might not be what you think. And I mean, we've already gone from radio. This is not on radio right now. We're communicating across a distance of thousands of miles from Bronx to Boulder and back
free for free.
for free at some sort of frame rate of millions per minute or second, whatever, mind-boggling frame rate for free.
And not only that,
And,
Doc, not only you and I sharing that ability, but we can share that with everyone around the
and
world.
everyone's participating. People are listening, and this would not be detectable by some other society's SETI project.
No.
And they would say, there's nothing coming from Earth. There's nothing going on there. We're not getting any shortwave radio signals from the Doc and Buddy show. The Doc and Buddy show must have ceased to exist.
Exactly.
And it's kind of what you're saying. They could be quiet.
And not only that,
network.
a civilization 5,000 years ahead of us might be concerned about a civilization 5,000 years ahead of them. 5,000 years ahead of them. I think it's very logical to assume a lot of things about the structure of the universe and how the universe is composed. I've got some conjectures based on things I've experienced. I mean, I could babble them out really quickly, but basically there's biologicals and there's post-biologicals. Technology obviously leads to the post-biological option. And there are post-biologicals and biologicals. And I think the biologicals would stay together. It would kind of cooperate together. And, for the most part, they would if their species allowed them to, because there's a greater threat of the growing post-biologicals. It would probably be like biologicals versus post-biologicals, not necessarily in conflict, but just in acquisition of data and, a life form information and blah, 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 whatever. But I had a really scary thought today, Doc.
Yes.
Can I share this one?
Please do.
It's all based on logic. Okay. We know that UFOs have been crashing around the world. Correct? They've been crashing around the world. We have China that has definitely admitted to at least 2 crashes that we know about. Russia, there's a very long case history of UFOs crashing in Russia. South America, there's empirical evidence of crashes in South America, and very, 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 very strong evidence for crashes in the United States. And of course, the question is, how could they get millions of light years and just crash from our weapons and our radar trying it the first time? Somehow, they were unprepared. It's that same whole naivety, thinking that we need to speak in basic symbols and prime numbers. If they're more advanced, they know every language on Earth. They're probably tweeting, all this different shit. But anyway, I think the reason why they're crashing is on purpose. They're crashing these devices on purpose. Some of them are crashed on purpose. There's another little thing about a portion of them I won't get into, but a belief I have. But let's say they are, hypothetically, let's say they are crashing these craft around the Earth on purpose over time and making these craft about a certain distance ahead technologically each time and as time passes. So it's not so far out of mental conception. It's actually something that's dreamable and achievable over time. And these have been left, and they've gotten more and more sophisticated over time. And they followed near future technology, as we know from UFO case history. Why would a race do that? Why would they do that? Why would they give, let's say they have the prime directive, which is a very logical kind of universal assumption. We feel that way about uncontacted tribes here on our planet. And you can imagine others might feel the same way because there's more data. They're more valuable in studying of their data. And I think information is the most valuable thing in the future, not like, blood or DNA. So anyway, why would they do that? Well, there's a presumption that they're doing it on purpose. Well, why would they do it on purpose? Why would they want us to have anti-gravity and the ability to leave the planet more so than music? Why wouldn't they leave us great music to inspire us or great art? Why just that one theme? Why do experiencers say the same thing over and over? They're teaching us to fly. They're teaching us about the craft. They're teaching us advanced physics. It's all about leaving the planet in this craft. It's not just about having anti-gravity on Earth. It's about leaving the planet. Why are they warning us about nuclear weapons? It may not just be nuclear, but perhaps it's logical to assume that they know something we don't because they're more advanced. And if all the things they choose to communicate with us, they avoid conversation. They're just giving us this. They're conversing with action. People can say words, but you really can only believe people's actions. Serial killers look all sorts of ways. There's charming serial killers you'd never guess. You can only judge people by their actions, by the caliber of their character, not by their words. And UFOs have time and time again displayed something over time. If there were a threat, a definitive 100 years of visitation, wow, are they stupid to be a threat? I mean, it's a long time to be whatever threat they're being. But why give us the ability to leave the planet? Okay, so then there's an assumption, another assumption one could make. One could make an assumption that something bad is going to happen and they want to ensure that this biology is safe on this planet. That's a safe assumption, correct? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Given that as a safe assumption, in seeding all these different places, they're not going to be the diplomat and say, you are the ones who should be saved and you are the ones who should be saved. They're not going to do that. They're not going to get their mud in the water. They have a prime non-interaction clause. But what they can do is crash the damn things because we're so close. They see it all coming. Maybe it's a gamma ray burst that they tracked light years away. Maybe it's our own nuclear weapons, like they're going, hello, hello. Every society, as they grow bigger, some idiot nukes somebody. Hello. They're highlighting it with different colored lasers and literally shutting them off for us. So maybe they know that a certain number of civilizations, a percentage of them, at some point, technology gets greater and greater, more powerful. So there's several things about that theory I don't like. One is that a certain group of people, aerospace engineers, military, this, that, and the other, the super ultra wealthy, they're the ones who may be able to avoid any of these issues. Maybe the government's not telling us because of that. Maybe they know stuff like that and aren't telling us that. I hate that whole theory. I just want to say I fucking hate it. I'm sorry to curse.
Which theory do you hate?
I hate that whole theory right there. That whole thing. That whole damn
Well,
thing.
I don't know. Listen, I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions about they.
Absolutely.
And, there is no doubt in my mind talking to David Noble Whitecrow, and we're going to be doing another episode later in June for those who are waiting for episode 7. And he has said as early as 1941, they were putting special energy weapons on naval ships that were called radar, pulsed radar, to try to take some of these craft down.
Yeah.
So I am sure some of them could be, as you're suggesting, so far technologically advanced, we wouldn't be able to do that. But
here's another.
What's that?
Here's an assumption that saves that whole possibility, throws it out the door. We live in a simulation, and all of these craft are actually built by psychokinesis in the mind. I know from CE5s, it starts with flashes of light. They get closer from orbital, lower to ground. They get physical shapes, and then they have encounters. That was my experience, and I could go through a lot of people's experiences. That was Rama's experience as they progressed through their formula. It could be that, and that it's all, it's all simulation bullshit.
Well, if it's a simulation, then I am a simulation too. And so are you.
I am.
So get used to it. But I don't buy the simulation. What's it a simulation of? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. But I know that's a very trendy idea right now to think about it that way. Let me finish my idea.
Please.
My idea is that some of these craft are coming from parallel Earth realities that are not necessarily that far ahead of where we are at now. They've just figured out time travel. Like you and I have almost figured out time travel when we do RV. We're that close to it, right? So move forward 1,000 years and someone can actually do it with their craft. We could be dealing with civilizations that are just 1,000 years ahead of us that still could have some sort of interaction with our technology. And
know about radar? They're from our future?
I don't know.
That wouldn't.
I mean,
here's another possibility.
We're guessing in the dark about who these civilizations are. And they could be a variety of. The reason we're not hearing about it, I assume, from the government is that it's so freaking complex that they can't even amongst themselves agree what it is. And they're fighting amongst themselves, as we see right now. And then you get people like Nimitz witnesses who say, I know what I saw. I saw a craft making 90-degree turns at thousands of miles an hour. And whatever it is, I deserve to know about it. I'm the radar intercept controller. And you better damn well tell me before we launch an air exercise if there's going to be stuff out there. And so you've got all these competing interests. So I reject the conspiracy. Folks, I reject the conspiracy interpretation here. I just want to get that on the record, buddy. I don't accept the conspiracy. It's lots of competing interests, like you're saying, the aerospace engineers, the witnesses. And I don't think anyone has a handle on this.
Really?
That's my personal view.
But I think it's very healthy to do what I just did, is make a conjecture, bounce it around, and say, do some of these factors line up? Let's explore this angle. Let's explore that angle. Now, let me provide a completely different explanation for the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Another possibility, and it could be both of these together, that some of these craft are created by, under very special circumstances, certain people who have demonstrated psychokinesis under bottled up pressure situations. Like, we've talked about this before, Foo Fighters and Fatima. All these things seem to be very matched up to human minds, and that different locations seem to be reflective of the people there. Haunted houses seem reflective of the people there. Scary, famous locations are reflective of the people coming there. Maybe the mind is so much more powerful than we ever anticipated. Now, when I've done CE5, it started lights, distance, getting smaller, closer to the ground. They become more solid craft. And then you have ground experiences. Maybe you learn over time how to construct these things. And maybe they crash all the time because your subconscious can only maneuver so much versus the universe. You know what I mean? And then ultimately it's like, and whatever you did with your subconscious, you really made a craft. So maybe that's why they follow 75 years into the future technology-wise, because that's as much as a human mind can contemplate. Maybe that's why the radar operator is always finding them. And maybe that explains all the phenomena. It's the same theory. It explains the same thing. It seems semi-practical. Maybe it's both. Maybe imagine.
Buddy, we cannot reject any of these ideas right now. It could be any and all of the above because we don't have enough evidence, because someone named, I can't say their name, but I think its initials start with Uncle Sam, are not telling us what they know. So the rest of us are basically guessing around in the dark.
I can tell you that
Jody, when I interviewed him, he said, the UFO researchers are their worst enemies and so forth. But we don't know we don't have access to this data. You did a FOIA request for some of the ATIP stuff, but I have to say, buddy, those are all possibilities. I like entertaining them. I just feel that we're sort of up against something that's so complex. It could be partly psychokinesis. There is no doubt about it. I mean, if you can do these mental projections and move and bend things, and you were able to show us some of your examples in the RV class still last month, right? Just a month ago. Amazing, buddy. You showed us that fork. I have it right here.
Sideways. I've never seen what I thought about that since.
Listen, folks. Buddy was talking a lot about psychokinesis. I thought, can he really do this now? Have any of you ever bent a fork sideways?
I've never even seen that before, Doc. That was so weird. And it happened right after the class as I was eating at the table. I said, sideways would be funny. I grabbed it by the top and it just went sideways.
I keep it by my desk. It's so weird.
I thought it would, because people always go forward or back. You can muscle that. You know what I mean? Sideways might be tough.
So, buddy, there's another possibility here.
Yeah.
What we're getting in the UFO reality is a projection of our own minds coming back to us. Part of our minds that we don't even know we have.
We know that, like an iceberg, the majority of our mind is under the surface.
And it has something to do with us. That's why I've always felt they're not necessarily just visitors coming from another galaxy or...
Well, like our theory... I think it's a little bit of both, perhaps, unless we live
it could be all of the above. And if it is all of the above, it's likely to be very complex, which
If
Which
this
type of
field exists,
Titans?
if this field exists that we utilize and connects all this different stuff, like Volta connected all the weird phenomenology they thought was spirit energy 200 years ago and ended up being the electromagnetic field, if this really is a substructure, it will be found, and you would predict. The prediction would be if you ever ran into an advanced civilization, they would know about it and utilize it within its parameters. It does have limited parameters. And we see from the government's secret documents, the
Mhm.
documents they pitched even to the Congress, that we might be right, Doc. I think it could be a combination of these factors and
They
that there is
mentioned
a
it.
field. There's a field, Doc.
Good old slide 9.
Yep.
I
Because
wish
it
I could
is
call
advanced
slide
race.
9 up right here to show people on the screen. They talk about these alterations of the space-time construct and all these strange effects that they can barely have. We have the vocabulary to talk about. But here's what I would suggest, buddy, is that we're not necessarily shooting down the entire spectra of craft that are out there. We're maybe getting the 5% that are just vulnerable, that are less evolved than the ones that can travel around different dimensions and move around the
Sure.
space-time continuum. And we're getting, that's all we're getting, because no,
And think,
David Whitecroak said that he had a call from a guy who said, I'm Mr. X. I'm not telling you my name, but I served in the Navy when you did. And we had a name for that program. It was called the UFO Hunter Strike Force.
wow.
UFO Hunter Strike Force. Now, who's UFOs? Could they be the Nazi reptilians from Antarctica?
Only the ones that use the magic from the chupacabra gained from the harp. Yeah.
Yes, the Chupacabra gang from Harp,
But they
mixed
got that.
in with a little Bigfoot magic. Do not forget the Bigfoot magic.
Yeah. And
Bigfoot.
yeah, and they got that from the blue chickens. So it's complicated. It's never, you knew it was never.
It is quite complicated. So I have to say, buddy, I like to err on the side of saying I don't know.
Yeah.
And because I don't, there's evidence, we don't even know what sort of evidence we're looking at. But, buddy, let me ask you this. Would a nuclear explosion be enough, like they were doing in Nevada test desert area, and Pacific be enough to take down one of these craft if it happened to be there at the time?
No, they would know about nuclear weapons. They would know about everything on this planet. They're not stupid. But hold on, think about this for a second. Would a civilization 1,000 years ahead of us, let's say technologically, just 1,000 years ahead of us, they could decide how they chose to appear to us? We don't even know how they really look. We cannot really conceptualize it. Think about this in a zoo. Animals oftentimes have zookeepers and vets dress up as things that they can kind of relate to, and the zoo animals must be like, "What the fuck? I don't know what reality is," but maybe they are smart enough to know, we're 10,000 years more advanced than them. They can't really conceptualize all the things that we are. So let's design a avatar that is something within their
Well, you're going now. You're getting into the Jacques Vallée point
well,
of
that,
view, which is he would agree with you. He would say that these are not craft at all. These are projections of some intelligence that is just projecting stuff that's a little bit ahead of where we're at, so that it attracts our attention. He referred to it as a barometer of civilization's evolution. It's a test to test the civilization. How do they react? I don't know. Maybe you're saying like they're dressing up like the polar bear at the zoo in the polar bear suit just so that they want to see how the polar bear relates.
Yeah, or they keep it within. The reason why the UFOs constantly over history seem to represent near future technology is because they don't want to scare the fuck out of us or be so far out of our conceptual range we can't realize that they're another race, that they're just something completely different.
So
They
we're dealing
want
with
to let us conceptualize them. They're hand holding us into conceptualizing them. And then even over time, first it's just images, and then over time, drop in little pieces. You gotta believe a freaking piece.
so it's a puppet show.
It could just be, we don't know, Doc. It's like you said,
The
I'm
cosmic
unlearned.
puppet show.
And this episode, I think I've unlearned more than any of our previous episodes where I've unlearned. Now, I just throw those ideas out there. They're two different converse ideas. And I would love to hear something that explains all the different varied but unique and very specific repeating phenomena that happens again and again. There are real factors there, and there are real actions over time that you can look at and say, what would a practical civilization do? Why would they be doing these things? And I think that's a logical, fun pursuit, first of all. And I think it could be a worthwhile pursuit, but it is
Yeah.
fun. And you and I have touched different aspects of this, from the CE5 side to exploring this field. So, and even though we think we know something, we don't know. I don't know poop. Every day I
Okay.
really. I could
But
be.
we want to stop for an advertisement and a message from our sponsor.
Please, I know. I'm sorry, sponsor.
Our sponsor this week is remote viewing.
Yes.
And remote viewing has given us another target, folks.
It has, and there's a number.
43701178. I will front load this one. The target is a person. Describe the person. Okay.
Wow, that is so cool. Doc, I'm going to do this one when we get off. When does it? Ouch. Since you saw this, and you will attest that I do not know what the target is, correct?
You do not know what the target is. I picked it this morning because we get so much reaction on Twitter.
Yes.
I do this on Twitter, folks. You go sign up Twitter, Simeon Hine, one word, and I will give the feedback tomorrow evening.
Great. You can see on my channel, I did a few live remote viewings with different people, and I had 3 staggering results. One was the drawing of the Coliseum, and it was the Coliseum. Crazy. These live ones are the best ones to do in a lot of ways, Doc, because you can challenge yourself in a really open way, but you have nothing to lose. And I think it's also really important. We always talk about getting the target and the excitement of getting the target.
Yeah.
Losing, quote unquote, not getting everything perfect is super important and great. And you know that you're going to flop a lot. You're going to get some things imperfect. You're going to say ocean and it's dry land. And that's good because you're going to get and learn from those sensations. If you just take it as a failure, you're not learning. You're scientific.
You're exactly right.
Exactly. Every little sensation. You may have gotten a little synesthesia for the first time ever.
Right.
I've gotten this. Say, wow, that was cool. I want to explore this. Doc, you're such a great teacher at this stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of the different teachers, and wow. I mean, and it's very natural to you because you've been doing this for so long. You've done the Ingo method. It's such a logical method. It addresses a lot of aspects of psychology that all the other methods never addressed for me.
Yeah.
And,
thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. It was
really
fun having you there. And
yeah, I'm going to be at the next intermediary class if you have one.
Yeah, we'll do that in the fall. We have another one coming up at the end of June, 29th, 30th. It's a 2-day class, but of course, people have the virtual viewing online, so they can practice. People who sign up for that get the virtual viewing online. You can sign up for it on its own, but I put that in there so you can train ahead of time. And then when you come to the class, you've already got a lot of it down. So we're going to do it. And we're going to do a little CE5 protocol explanation.
Awesome.
Just to explain this, because it's going in this direction. It's all going in these directions of new modalities of interacting with space and time and intelligence and consciousness. Yes. And why not just go for it? See, here's what I want to say about the questions you were asking a few seconds ago, buddy. We don't have the answers to the questions that you're asking. Nobody does. They're all potentially realistic hypotheses. Would we be able to shoot them down? Are they too advanced? Are they deliberately crashing? All of this. And that's fine. Just asking those questions opens our minds to new possibilities that I think our society needs to be engaging in right now. And the scariest thing to me when I wake up every day is that I only hear this type of conversation when we're doing Reality's Edge. I don't hear this conversation anywhere else. I imagine people in classified programs might start in this direction, but what's bothering me is that we're not having this conversation. We need to be having this conversation, and we need to ask the very questions that you just asked, because I think it'll lead us to very interesting places if we just engage in that conversation without even knowing ahead of time where we're going. But our society has become this thing that always wants to know the answers before the questions are asked. It wants to play it safe. We can't play it safe anymore, folks. We don't even know what universe we're in at the moment. We cannot be playing it safe.
We've been denied the reality. Our country, more so than Russia or China or even South America, they've incorporated the reality of this into their culture. The people are prepared. Our people are divisive in terms of religion. This is going to be more difficult because of the secrecy. The suppression at this point is damaging us. Damaging us. Because, and think of the excitement and getting kids enthralled and all the different possibilities that we're denying ourselves and we're denying our society, and it's ridiculous at this point when
it's ridiculous. And the person who said this a couple of weeks ago was Luis Elizondo at that SCU conference in Huntsville, Alabama. He said we need to, if you watch some of the bootleg versions of that on YouTube, he said we need to start having a national conversation. And The conversation means we need to explore the possibilities, bring in the evidence. We could have, we have procedures in place to have a discussion about this. We've got YouTube. We can have congressional hearings. We've got C-SPAN. We've got National Press Club. Why isn't it happening?
This could be really much more important than just the reality of ET. We're being denied the next questions. After we accept they're here, then we have to ask a few questions. Why are they here? What are they doing? I mean, all these things are super important questions we're being denied. And other countries are taking advantage in those things. And, we know we're in an extinction and this, that, and the other. Regardless, the future is going to be competition. And we're losing out on that competition wherever it goes. I'm optimistic, and humans' ability, and especially knowing this stuff, gives me faith that we're not mustard. Just the fact that I can tap into the field gives me faith that if we can teach enough people about this reality that advanced races know, just human beings can explore more of their potential, and we can just be more dynamic into the future, and our species can, bifurcate or just grow better. I think we have all these different senses. And my nose isn't perfect. I don't smell perfect. My ears aren't perfect. They don't hear perfect. My mouth isn't perfect. I don't speak perfect. And don't expect RV and these esoteric skills to be perfect. It's an even more subtle sense. But
well,
we'll be more human.
No, it's everything you're saying is true, but if we don't start engaging these questions, we're in for an awfully strong shock. You can't have it both ways. Either the society is gradually adapting to facts over centuries. Adapting to facts over centuries. Imagine the explorers leaving Europe hundreds of years ago, discovering what we now call America, other continents. They had to incorporate this into a worldview that said that there were two spheres, a water sphere and a land sphere. That's what the belief was back then, that there were two separate spheres, and one was bigger. And how did you fit the discovery of America into this? And it led to this hundreds of years of thinking, and it ended up with this version we have now of this one round Earth, the way the cosmology we have now, the Earth not being the center of the universe. I mean, people would defend that to the death. People were burned at the stake over this concept of the Earth being the center of God's universe because we're made in his image. It's a him. People defend this. You have to adapt to the facts, because it was Hal Puthoff who said a year ago in June that there's so many sensors out there now, it's almost impossible to hide this phenomena, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the fidelity every year goes up. People's phones are getting more and more higher zoom. I know a guy who's got generations like 5 or 6 night vision, which is they don't even allow you to have in the U.S. for some reason. Doc, we're being denied that excitement. And I think it's coming anyway, because I don't think disclosure is strictly, fortunately, in the United States hands. I think it's in greater hands. It's in all of our hands. We can see E5 and make contact. We know we can. There's good groups out there who do it repeatedly, and it's a real phenomenon. It's not, the satellite solar panels. When something comes down out of the clouds and moves down, or I can talk about the best groups too and talk about those experiences, but I don't have to. The CE5ers know.
The system, the scientific system we live in is very conservative, and it's continually going back to the past to maintain a type of secrecy and to keep out innovation. Mm-hmm. There is still this widespread belief amongst people that cold fusion is not a real process. Let me tell you something. It's been reproduced by over 100 different labs, I believe, around the world.
Yeah.
Consistently. It's not an easy reaction to sustain, though some people like Andrea Rossi say that they have this and they are installing it right now to customers. We'll find out if these customers are happy, they're saving money, and they're getting this pollution-free heat, then it really works. But you still have people on my YouTube channel say there's no evidence for cold fusion. I was there at the SSE conference when Vittorio Violante, Dr. Violante from Italy, said we reproduced cold fusion at ENA in Italy. It's very challenging to get going. You have to have at least 90% of the hydrogen filling the palladium metals, right? It has to be done just right, and sometimes it takes a couple weeks to get really going, but the process is real. Now, whether that actually generates something that you can plug in and charge your batteries. That's another question. But the phenomena itself is real, and yet most people don't think it's real.
But what's very, very interesting about that cold fusion latticed harmonic moment, all items has a harmonic. Every items have different harmonics and subharmonics where they do bizarre things. They're able to communicate between different frequencies. That's what harmonics basically do. And that's a lot of what we know from RV resonance and stuff is about. But isn't it interesting that the same thing for cold fusion, this latticed palladium and a harmonic is what makes cold fusion, but also there's that Dr. Zilnesic, which has something very it's Dr. Z something. You can find him, but it's an anti-gravity formula about lattice palladium, and hitting it at a certain terahertz gives an anti-gravity reaction, which is very similar to the Hal Puthoff metal that at a certain terahertz gets an anti-gravity reaction. So we know resonance is a way to have harmony between fields, and those fields can maybe generate energy. Maybe those fields can decouple you from gravity.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah. Right. No, it's that is what Violante said. It's resonance. It's a resonance reaction. It's based on resonance, and resonance at subatomic levels can sometimes be tricky to get it to be coherent enough to generate a sustained signal, a sustained feedback loop. You know what we're talking about. But, buddy, there is not many people. Maybe I'm missing it, but is someone out there talking on the TV shows and the different places where people talk about these sort of exciting new technologies that would inspire children's minds to be thinking about alternative pollution-free energy sources that would guarantee a minimal level of abundance for all people? And
no, are there any shows about
our need to be destroying the environment for resources in the way we do? In this extraction of fossil fuels and all the systems that go along with it. We're really, we're destroying the place pretty quickly, folks. There's even a shortage of sand now. Do you realize that there are sand pirates? It's a big industry too. There's a sand mafia. And they basically,
a massive shortage. There's all these different shortages for phones that can only be, they're basically like blood minerals now, like these certain cadmiums and different things.
I think we can do better than this, and it's up to the United States to be the leader here. And I don't feel like we're being the leader. I just don't feel like the country as a whole.
Temporally, we think very selfishly right now, me. And if we really were a little bit more empathetic as a society, we could ensure the existence of our society better. Because an empathetic society would say, you know what, we might need to do this into the future. We need to be thinking, some groups out there of humans do think a certain time into the future, but even they only think short term, well,
I think in my feeling about this, we're living in this bubble right now, and various people are trying to prick the bubble. I feel that the TTSA group, whatever you feel about them, is in their way pricking the bubble. Their TV show starts next week.
Are you a prick?
And the bubble is of this illusion of the way things have worked in the past. I mean, it has to work that way forever. We have these new technologies like you're talking about.
That's what we're all doing. We're all pricking the bubble. I'm a prick. You're a prick.
Right.
All those guys at TTSA are pricks. Big time.
Yeah.
But we need to burst this bubble. This bubble, there's a lot of things in the next bubble. It's not just ETs here. It's all these new technologies. It's a big new awakening. Come on, guys. Your bubble is boring.
It's a boring bubble. We need to burst through this bubble and get to the next one where there's a lot of exciting stuff. And, all I'm saying, buddy, is it's going to happen one way or another because, facts have a way of sticking around, and eventually you have to adapt to this. But I imagine that to get to this next stage, maybe we won't be able to do it in a kind of linear, continuous way, like in an ordinary way. Maybe there has to be a non-ordinary way that we get to these technologies in some unforeseen way that will happen because, nature has a way of connecting the dots, whether you like it or not. Nature has a way of connecting the dots. The dots will connect. The dots will connect. And
I think we want everyone to be a prick, basically.
Yeah.
We want everyone to pop the bubble. And I want to be a big prick. I don't want to be a little prick. I want to be a kind of big prick that goes out there and goes, bam, and bursts big bubbles. And do you want to be a little prick? You don't want to be a little prick. If you're going to be a prick, you burst that bubble as a big prick, like a giant, huge prick, like the biggest prick anyone's ever seen. Because you know what, the future depends on our prick, and
Yeah,
my prick.
I would say so. Yes.
Did this go wrong at the end here? Is that our message? Be a prick.
I think essentially yes, because if we just keep going along playing the game the way we've been playing it, we're going to get the same results we've been getting. And it's just not enough anymore. Look, I think the TTSA people have a point. It's a Sputnik moment. It is a Sputnik moment. We've got Leonard, cold fusion, all these interesting PK experiments that you're a part of that you really can't share, but you've mentioned in general, and lots of other things that are going on. But if we don't kind of take the mantle here and take responsibility, just take responsibility and stop monkeying around and saying, oh, there's no data, there's no evidence, kind of denying reality. It's kind of a schizophrenic situation. I mean, as I pointed out, I'm down the hill from where Condon killed the UFO studies in the United States in 1969 with his Condon report, which we know was a total setup from the beginning, just to fake out the public to make it look like there was science. You know how much they spent on that? $500,000 in 1969. That's a huge amount of money to. And meanwhile, you have the Bolender memo from Carol Bolender, who Stanton Friedman just passed away recently, talked to Carol Bolender on the phone. He mentioned he talked, and Bolender had said, oh, by the way, the really good stuff never went through Project Blue Book. There were other channels for the good stuff. So this is a bunch of freaking BS, and I don't think we should be putting up for this anymore. It's just way past that, way past the time to put it. It's not just me. Hal Puthoff said that on stage. If Hal Puthoff, someone who's had a security clearance since the 1960s, probably the longest running security clearance in the government right now, since the 1960s, still has his security clearance, we're told. If he can get up on stage and say, look, folks, it wasn't true. The whole UFO thing is real. We're trying to figure it out. And if he can say it's a Sputnik moment, I think we can all say, look, we have to get our act together here. Who's ever running the show is not doing a good enough job at keeping information flowing to the kids, the children, as you point out. Those are the minds that are forming right now around the reality to be. And don't we want them to have a fair shot at things or keep pretend? You know what this is? It's like that movie Pleasantville, where it's all black and white at the beginning. But the colors are coming. The colors are coming one way or another. You can't avoid it.
It's evolution. It's really literally as much as evolution. And if you try to stop it, you may be killing us, or at least the ones on this continent. So I don't know. It's up to the government now to release this information and as knowing it's in the best national defense and it's a priority. Otherwise, they're really going to be responsible for who knows what in the future. But they're certainly handicapping us unquestionably. And Doc, you just phrased it so well. You put all the pieces together so well. It doesn't matter what you technically believe in it. There's something going on here. Give us the basics because you're handy.
Yeah, it's not responsible, but we'll see. But I think there is action happening, and it's up to the military to work this out amongst the different competing groups within the defense establishment to decide, are we going to support Nimitz witnesses and people who haven't even stepped forward yet, some of whom you've mentioned on this show, who we were told wrote the pilot, Fravors other pilot up there in the F-18 that day.
I'm not going to mention her name. But,
well, yes, because people have, they said, well, she has a right to her privacy, and I guess that's a point of view on it. So her name hasn't been publicly revealed except on. I think we did it on the show in the beginning, yeah. But apparently, she was so upset by this that she wrote a letter to her aunt. This is what I heard. To try to say she was so wigged out by this Tic Tac incident. So is the military going to support people like this female pilot and many others, so they can come forward and share this letter that they wrote to their relatives about being wigged out. Do you want the military personnel to be wigged out? I don't think that's a very secure situation to get there when they see these things.
You want them for cutting edge, exactly what you want them to be. You're handicapping us. You are. It's not that time anymore. And those of you who have security clearances, who've held on to them for so long, worried about the only ones who are to have any justifiable concern about are the evangelicals within the government. But there is a responsibility, a greater responsibility, to rise to them and challenge them, at least with the notion, direction them to researchers who also believe that this is all has to do with God, and it's just more dynamic, beautiful part of God's creation. And if we're silly enough to think God's creation is just what perhaps we think it is, maybe we think we're God, and maybe we shouldn't think we're so smart. Maybe we should unlearn a little and start being pricks.
Yeah,
bubble, because bubble gets burst every week, Doc. Every conversation with you, literally, we challenge all sorts of different things. Even if we're just communicating, and I get off the phone, I'm like, fuck, I just unlearned something else. So, thank you for that. And
no, thanks. We just, it's always helpful to have a discussion, because then we can see all the different points of view, consider what we know, consider how much we don't know, and then see what's a reasonable course of action to move forward, because we're in the middle of this mysterious thing we call the universe, or as some of us call the multiverse. We don't really know where we are. We could pretend we know where we are, and we can have these kind of little baby interpretations, some of whom I guess we call religion.
But you have a greater
different religions, and I'm picking on any particular one. Fundamentalism. What? Good.
If it is your religion, that's fine. But you also have a responsibility, in whatever your position is, not to impose that religion on everyone else. Leave the possibility, based on you accepting an important position to protect all peoples, all religions. You have to take into consideration that greater responsibility. And that greater responsibility beseeches you to look at the real evidence and see that it's not satanic, it's not woo-woo, it's not religious, it's not paranormal. It's just like the rainforest, a new animal in the rainforest. The universe is like a rainforest. It's not supernatural.
And this,
right,
this country was founded by people that were tired of religious intolerance in Britain.
Well, that's why we started the damn country.
This is why it started, is that you had Quakers and different groups who were being oppressed by the British Crown, and they said, well, to heck with you, we're going to another country, we're going somewhere else. And they came over here, and eventually they said, well, we're just sick of you entirely, goodbye, we're not your colony anymore. And
let's start a colony.
It cannot be a country of religious intolerance. That's not, it goes against the grain of what the whole values that this country is based on. And that should not be the reason why we're not talking about this topic. But if there are people high up in the government, the US government, who are fundamentalists, who are repressing discussion on this topic, like Elizondo and others have suggested, to the point where people studying this topic have left the government or have lost their jobs because they want to study UFOs scientifically. It's actually going to hurt those people's religion the most when the facts come out, because they're going to be seen as so out of the loop and so far from the reality that the rest of us can see with our own eyes, that they're going to seem like complete kooks. They're going to seem like complete kooks, and they won't be having their government jobs very long. I'll tell you that. Not very long.
I don't know, but they're being exactly everything they claim to hate, because they're being, religious zealots. In another country, you get your religion imposed on you, and all of its implications of that religion. The United States was created. And there's a greater responsibility here, and they know it, unless they're just total egomaniacs and stuff. But Doc, I've got to get going here, because
thanks, great show, buddy. And so listen, folks, I just want to let people know that I'll be interviewing Dave Beatty tomorrow on my YouTube channel, on YouTube Live at same 12 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to be talking about his new Nimitz, updated Nimitz experience, which debuts tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. There was some leak by mistake, and there is a version out there, but if you don't have the leaked version, You can watch it tonight on Dave's channel. I've started watching it. It's really good. It's got witness interviews with our Nimitz guys. All the best. You know, Kevin, Gary, PJ, and Jason are all in it from the Laughlin conference. They got interviewed there. So that's on tonight. We'll be talking with Dave tomorrow to find out how he got involved with all this. And, you know, it's just a great, if you haven't seen the Nimitz experience, you got to see it. So.
And Doc, really quickly, I just want to compliment you too on these amazing historic interviews you've been a part of the past.
Oh, thanks. Well, I am not hearing you, buddy. You have froze. Oh, you're back. You're back. Okay.
Froze. Okay. You also give away a lot of free remote viewing videos outside of that stuff, and you're very generous. And I think people should take it of that.
Well, thank you, buddy. I have enjoyed doing these interviews. I just happened to get in touch with some of the right people to talk to. We'll be doing more of them. And thanks again, everyone, for watching. Thanks, buddy.
We love you guys.
And
see you next
time. See you
time.
on Reality's Edge. Take care for now. See you next time.